El verbo gustar vimos en clase esta semana. Por ejemplo, hicimos esta pregunta. ¿Te gusta tomar una siesta y con qué frecuencia la tomas? Vimos esta pregunta en clase miércoles, yo creo. Y el objetivo de repasar esta pregunta es enfocar en los pronombres. ¿Te gusta? ¿Con qué frecuencia la tomas? Me gusta. No la tomo. Quiero repasar estos pronombres because throughout this semester, practically in every chapter, we've had all these pronouns, and this is what I was talking about on Wednesday, but it's fundamental that as we acquire more and more pronouns, we categorize them correctly, because pronouns are they can be very ambiguous. Nouns are obvious, but when you use something to replace a noun, it can interfere with comprehension. And B, we're going to be learning pronouns, and we're going to be seeing pronouns, and you're going to have pronouns on the superset, and you're going to have pronouns on a test, and you have to be able to recall how these pronouns are used. So I want to make sure as we're learning them, we're keeping them nice and organized in our comprehension. So, ¿te gusta tomar una siesta? We know what this question's asking. This question's asking what? Do you like to take a nap, right? ¿Te gusta tomar una siesta? And then we respond with me gusta tomar una siesta. And we talked about this on Wednesday. Me gusta is referring to whom? Me. So te and me, we've seen throughout, since we've seen pronouns used over and over again. They can be direct, indirect object pronouns, and reflexive pronouns. So those are nice. Me, te, and nos. Those are nice pronouns because they can only be me, you, or us. But la tomas that we saw on Wednesday, la doesn't in this context refer to a person, not me, not you, and not even her. So it's not an indirect object pronoun. It's a direct object pronoun. That's what you were saying on Wednesday. It's a direct object pronoun referring to what? La siesta. Exactly. The nice thing about Spanish and pronouns versus English is gender. So it's very obvious once you become accustomed to pronouns to identify what it is referring to, because the only other thing left in the sentence, these gustan tomar verbs, it has to be referring to siesta. Okay? Is everybody with me on this? Because I really want to make sure it's clarified prior to acquiring more pronouns and seeing these verbs like gustar that use all these different pronouns. And in class on lunes, you had the question that used gusta, which is what we're going to be talking about today, along with other pronouns. We took what we were learning with reflexive pronouns last week, and we combined them with this concept that we're going to be talking about today, verbs like gustar that don't use reflexive pronouns. Cuando te gusta ducharte. Here we see te used twice, but they're being used as different types of pronouns. But it doesn't matter really to grammatically always recognize te in te gusta is an indirect object pronoun, but te in ducharte is called a what kind of pronoun? Reflexive. You know it's a reflexive pronoun because it's coming at the end of duchar. In our book, on our vocab page, the verb duchar isn't ducharte, it's duchar se. And when you see an infinitive in Spanish 102, in Spanish 201, in Spanish 202, and the rest of your life in Mexico next week, when you see se on the end of an infinitive, that tells you what about that verb? It's categorized as a what type of verb? Reflexive verb, which means in your response, you're going to need to include a pronoun me, te, se, nos, or se. This is important as we progress, because in Chapter 9, in August of this year, when we see each other again and you've spent the whole summer only using Spanish a little bit, or maybe not even at all, hopefully a little, you're going to have verbs in your chapter vocabulary that some have say in them and some of them don't. On the super site, you're going to have verbs in parentheses. If it has a say on the end, it's telling you, I need a reflexive pronoun. It's very important to note that now, so there's not a gap in that understanding as you progress later. Does that make sense? Okay, just clarifying reflexive verbs, because it's going to affect what we're learning this chapter as well. A mí me gusta ducharme. And recall what we said in class on Monday about ducharte and ducharme. Are we conjugating the verb? Are we conjugating the reflexive verb here when we say ducharte and ducharme? No, we're not. We're actually leaving it in its infinitive form. But what's changed and why? With levantarme and ducharme. The pronoun changes, right? Exactamente, chicos. Muy bien. So the pronouns change to me. Why has it changed to me? If it's infinitive, like in the book, it says levantarse and ducharse. Why did it change to ducharme and levantarme if we're not even conjugating the verb? Because we're referring to ourselves. And what do we know about Spanish? Everything has to what? Agree. Everything has to agree in Spanish. We do not have that in English. We don't have these agreement. I mean, we do a little bit, but nothing is profound as Spanish. So remember that when you're progressing through Spanish. If you click submit on the super site and you get it wrong, hopefully you'll be able to identify why. If that pronoun's highlighted in red, you'll be like, oh, that's right. I got to change ducharse to ducharme because the sentence had the verb prefiero in the yo form before it. Okay? And it's important to note that especially me's obvious, te's obvious. We talked about that. Me is referring to me, te is referring to you, nos is referring to us. There's no confusion. However, when we get in the third person pronouns, at this point, we've learned three types, direct, indirect, and reflexive. And the third person pronouns vary. Me, te, and nos are applied to all. But at the beginning of the semester, we learned lo, la, los, and las. And then we learned lay and lace last chapter, and now this chapter we've thrown in say. Three different categories of third person singular and plural pronouns. It gets confusing. So today I want to make sure to clarify, when do you use lay? When do you use say? And I just went over say, a reflexive pronoun. And we know to use say when. How do you know if you should use say to say he or they or she or usted or ustedes? How do you know when to use say? If the verb what? If the infinitive has what? If the original form of the verb has say on it. So you will know, I know, sorry, it's a little more obvious than I presented it. It's super obvious. You'll look up the verb and it'll have say on it, and then you know you need to use say if you're using it in the he, she, they, or, usted, ustedes, second person, but really, using third person pronoun form. So today we're going to talk about this ley. And what's up with the ley? When we say le gusta, we're saying what? A profeseta le gusta? What are we saying? Right, exactly. Profeseta likes to shower in the morning after waking up or getting up. And this is what we were talking about on Monday. Do you remember this? Does anybody remember in class on Monday when you recorded the answers on your paper? The Do you remember why we have to do that? Because this is relevant to this concept that we're going to look at today. So like when I say, profeseta is speaking Spanish or speaking English during this grammatical presentation, I would just say, profeseta está hablando español y inglés, or inglés. And I don't use the a, or profeseta habla español, or yo hablo español. Why don't I use an a with the verbs like estar and hablar?
You're doing it back on yours.
Más o menos. So the difference with hablar and estar, or even ir, is A, we don't have a say on the end to indicate reflection, which is what these says do. But also because, and I don't recall if you remember, I don't know if you remember me saying this, but with this verb gusta, what does this verb gusta even mean? To like. But when we really literally translate this from Spanish to English, we're saying, you know, showering in the morning, we're reading from right to left. Showering in the morning is pleasing to Profeseta. That's really what this is saying. So I want you to carry that with you. I want that to stick in your mind today as we grammatically decode why these verbs operate the way they do. Why is it not gusto or gustamos? Don't ever, in 102, 201, or 202, supersite test, ever write gusto or gustamos or gustas. It's not that you can never say that in Spanish. It's just through the 202 requirement. Just don't do it. Because we read from right to left with these verbs. Showering in the morning is pleasing to Profeseta, a Profeseta. That's why we have to have the a ti, a mi, rather than yo and tu, and le. Okay? So carry that with you as we see more. So the reflexive verbs, vestirse, need se, but verbs like gustar, which we were just talking about, require an indirect object pronoun, which we know these, we've learned these. We saw these last chapter in La Lección 6. So mete and nos, those are easy. But remember, and you've copied this before, ley and lace. So you're like, I know this, Profeseta, I know ley, I know lace. But what you need to know is when to use ley and lace, when to use lo, la, los, and las, and when to use se. I know you know these pronouns, but knowing when to use them is what's going to make or break your homework, your test, your final exam, etc. Or just Catalina when you're in Mexico and you're like, ¿le gustan margaritas? A mí también me gustan margaritas. So, me, no? And le. And it, you know, usually we say, yo también, me too, or, you know, I as well, but when somebody expresses liking something with like me gusta or le gusta or something, we want to say a mí también or a mí tampoco. Okay, so those are the pronouns in a nutshell. Today, these verbs that we're talking about, like gustar, they're going to use me, te, le, nos, os, and les. Indirect object pronouns, that's what those are called. But remember as well, how I just said, no gusto, no gustamos. The verb gustar, it's either me gusta or what? There's two options with gusta. It's either gusta or gustan. Exactly. Dos opciones nada más. So, me gusta lavarme el pelo. Me gustan el champú y el acondicionador. Dos opciones, nada más, siempre. Singular and plural. What determines the singular and plural form of gusta? I'll give you two options. Is it A, the person expressing the opinion, or B, what the opinion is about? What the opinion's about. Is that what you're going to say?
You said like how many things you like.
Exactly. Right. Whatever it is that's pleasing to you. Singular versus a plural. What it's about. Because why? Because really that's the subject. Washing my hair is pleasing to me. Or washing my hair with shampoo and conditioner is pleasing to me is really what we're saying. Okay? Which is why we read right to left. Which is why when we apply that concept, it's very simple. Duh, it's going to be gusta because the subject of this sentence is actually washing hair. Not me. I'm not the subject. I'm who it's pleasing to. Which is why gustan is plural. Because what am I talking about? Right, exactly. We have e. Two things, plural. And what do we know about infinitives in gusta? Do you remember? Even no matter what, and this is a rule that you need to like note. Again, you get it wrong on the supersite, you don't know why. It's probably because of this. If it relates to this error, whenever you have infinitives, I repeat, infinitives with verbs like gustar are always singular. Even if you have like bailar, cantar, beber margaritas, even if you list a ton of infinitives, and even if after the infinitives it's something plural, infinitives are always singular. So note that on your paper. Infinitives are always singular. Plural forms, and you can note this right here. Always singular, infinitives. Assuming you know what an infinitive is. Leer, escribir, bailar y cantar. Normally you'd be like, oh, those are two activities, plural. But the rule is, it's an exception to the rule. Okay? Gusta or gustan, nada más, on the supersite, on the test, which most of us know this already. Now we're going to build on what we know with verbs just like gustar. So verbs like hablar, estar, escribir, vivir, they live on one planet. These verbs on page 187, they live on a different planet. They function completely differently. They only have a singular or plural form in any tense. We just learned the preterite tense. Preterite tense, like, sorry, Catalina, I keep picking on you because you're going to Mexico and it's like so exciting that you're going to be able to speak Spanish. But when she gets back, I'm going to ask her, no pressure. But you'll be good to go because you will have been around Spanish, so you'll be fine. And I'm going to ask you, and hold on one second, I'm just going to get away from this page real quick. With these verbs like gustar on page 187 applies to all the tenses that we'll ever learn, past tense, imperfect, etc. All right, so they're organized like this on your notes, which is a little bit different than the way the book organizes them. I don't like the way the book organizes them because on page 187 they're alphabetical, which has nothing to do with what they mean, and they're not conjugated for you, and you're never going to use them in their infinitive form. So I went ahead and conjugated them. Why? Because, well, all the AR verbs, it's pretty easy, but aburrir. Oops, that should be singular. Perdón. Copy and pasting too much. Aburrir is an ER verb, so it's aburre and aburren. So let's start there with what these verbs mean. And don't look on page 187 because they translate them for you. I've categorized these verbs in 3 different categories or whatever, in groups. Because why? Why do you think I organized them like this and not alphabetically? They're slightly alphabetical. But what does encanta, fascina, interesa, importa all have in common? Yeah, they're kind of positive. They're, you know, like gusta. Encanta is just a little bit more than gusta. You're like, I say, Catalina, ¿te gustó Mexico? And she's like, Profeseta, me encantó. And when she says me encantó, she's not saying she liked it. She's saying, I loved it. I loved it. Fascina is pretty synonymous. But what really happens here with these verbs, gusta means to like. It is pleasing to me. It is enchanting to me. It is fascinating to me. When we express these opinions, it's not necessarily saying I love. It's really saying fascinating, enchanting, okay, to me. So what do you think interesa means? Yeah, like it's interesting to me. So in English, native English speakers say this. I said it too. In English, we say, you know, it's interesting to me. And in Spanish, native English speakers say, es muy interesante. You know, and I do it too because English is my native language. But really, we want to say me interesa. You don't need to say es interesante. That's so literally translated. You sound very gringo. You say me interesa. Me interesa la cultura, you know, or me interesa la práctica de las siestas. What do you think importa means? It's important to me, right? Exactly. Again, we don't really want to say es muy importante. I mean, we can, but me importa. Like, you know, mis clases me importan. Mi familia me importa, no? Or, you know, el dinero me importa, no? ¿Entienden? So instead of saying es importante a mí, we say me importa or me importan. If your grades are important to you, me importan, because it's plural. ¿Entienden? Okay, I'm going to come back to falta and queda. What about molesta? We've used this verb before, I think. To bother, okay? So it's a false cognate. It's not sexual abuse. It's to bother, but it's easy to remember because it's negative, right? Molesta. Something bothers you. It bothers me. Me molesta. That one's easy to translate, connecting the molesta, molestan, okay? Like if you're annoyed by the tourists in Charleston, how would you say that?
Me molesta los turistas.
Yes, me molestan los turistas, right? Plural, molestan. They're annoying to me, they bother me, for example. Or no me molesta para nada. So, por último, aburre and aburren looks like a word we've learned before. It's easy to remember, because why? Aburrido. ¿Cómo se dice aburrido? Boring, right, exactly. So if it bores you, let's say you have this professor that's so boring and their class bores you, you would say what? Me aburre su clase, right? Or if like you just can't stand, I don't know, opera music, opera concerts, opera music concerts or something like that, you would say me aburren los conciertos de opera, no? Okay, and then falta and queda. Falta, let's see, this means really lacking, and queda means remaining. So it's a little tricky, but falta is kind of like not having. So I pass out the papers and I skipped Pablo. He would say, Profeseta, me falta un papel. Like, it's like saying necesito. Okay, so falta is synonymous with necesitar because, I don't know, it's the lacking thing is kind of confusing. Necesito un papel, me falta un papel. Necesito dormir, me falta dormir. Necesito dinero, me falta dinero. ¿Entienden? So think about it in those terms. And then queda is like tango. Or, sorry, no tango. Well, actually, it's like tango. Me queda, well, actually, this is what I would say before this class. Me queda una clase. Is anybody finished after this class with school? Does anybody have any more classes? No one does? You do. Juliana, perfecto. Gracias. So I would say, a Juliana le queda una clase más. Es decir, Juliana tiene una clase más. Le queda. Okay? Remaining. Okay, chicos, I'm going to ask her on March 25th, Catalina, te gustó Mexico? No, it's okay. Te gustó Mexico? And what am I going to be asking her? Did you like Mexico? And it's actually an easy response. No pressure. It's I don't care if you remember this. I hope you do. Sí, you'll probably say sí. It's going to be like tropical y muy tranquilo. All she has to do is take me or te and change it to me. She's not going to do anything to gusto. Because when she says, sí, profeseta, me gustó, she's saying what? Yes, I liked it. I liked it. Gusto is talking about Mexico. It doesn't change. But the person who's expressing that opinion is what changes. Me gustó. So what we're learning now, vamos a aplicar el concepto, okay? Tomar una siesta. I know how I feel about this. You express how you feel. Tomar una siesta. Okay, muy bien. Muy bien. Excellent. Oh, muy bien. Tienen mucho en común todos. So, para mí, singular, por ejemplo, como Pablo, me. I would say like, me encanta. But a lot of you went straight to, I loved it. A lot of you all wrote, nos importa. Muy bien. Which is more, I don't know, creative, I feel like, how important it is to you. And notice I'm using importa. A lot of you all use importa because why? Oh, muy bien, pero ustedes no. Nos molesta. Why importa? Why molesta? Why encanta? Sí, pero chicos, miren, siesta es singular, muy bien, pero tomar infinitivos siempre son singulares. That's just the rule. It's always singular with an infinitive. Okay. Expresen sus opiniones. Ducharse por la mañana. Ducharse por la mañana. A lot of you all wrote again, nos importa. And if you were copying, if this was like the test, hint, 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 if this was the test, and I gave you ducharse por la mañana, you would complete the sentence or rewrite the sentence saying, nos importa duchar. Close. You're on the right track. On the test, you would write me, but if you have nos importa, you would change it to nos. Importa, singular, because why? Or, preocupa? It's an infinitive, exactamente. Preocupa is in your stack. I forgot. This actually, now that I'm remembering this, came from a different textbook that we used to use. But it's another verb that works like gustar. Preocupa is what again? Worries. Like preocupado, me preocupa. Like, it worries me. You know, like something, singular. Leer y escribir. Me gusta el debate. Okay, me molesta. Perfecto or nos. Some of you all said nos. Okay, muy bien. Excelente. So, Pablo wrote, me molesta. And he's correct because why? Aside from his me, that's correct. And his opinions are not incorrect or correct. But why is it molesta? This is what you're explicando. So careful, chicos. Even though we have multiple things, infinitives are what? Always singular. Always, always, always. Okay? Careful with those. Muchas personas expresarán nos or me aburren. Plural. ¿Por qué? Conciertos. Or nos interesan. Muy bien. Excelente. Or nos fascinan. Plural. Los conciertos. Ok. Otra opinión. ¿Cómo se dice cama? Es una palabra de vocabulario. Bed. So, muchos dijeron nos molesta or molestan? Molesta. No? So even though we have multiple adjectives, singular noun, una cama. So like la clase de matemáticas. Careful because matemáticas is plural, but we're talking about the class, okay? Adjetivos no se aplican. Mis notas. ¿Cómo se dice notas? It looks like notes. It can be notes, but really it means, in this context, grades. Mis notas. But here it's letter grades, like your midterm grades, your final grades, your GPA, Oh, me gusta. Nos duelen, dijo. Un grupo nos duelen. They what? They hurt us. Or preocupan. I know, depends. Preocupan. Sobre todo, importan. Sobre todo, plural. No? Plural. Mis clases. Este semestre. Un profesor terrible nos aburre. Muy bien. Or molesta también. Cuando afecta las notas, it's like, ugh. Okay, no.